Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. Guess who I am? Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. Let's get right to it. Well. You know, there's always a debate on who are the top 5 players in NBA history. Who are the top 5 players in the Bulls history? Who are the top 5 players in the Celtics history? Pistons, Magic. But sometimes you have players who had solid careers, right? They have solid careers, but they're not anywhere in the top 5, not even the top 10 players of their own team that they play for. Okay? So, Jason Williams, point guard Jason Williams, white chocolate. He had some interesting comments on Kobe Bryant. Okay? Williams said, I think there were 5 better basketball players that played for the Lakers at one time. But that's not taking anything away from Kobe Bryant. He's one of the greatest basketball players that's ever walked the face of this earth. Essentially, what he said, Kobe Bryant is not a top 5 Laker of all time. That's what he said. He said Kobe Bryant is not a top 5 Laker of all time. Okay. So, I went back and I looked at the top 10 Kings players in history. Okay. The top 10 Kings players, Sacramento Kings players in history. And I found a list. And the list goes Oscar Robertson 1, Jerry Lou Lucas 2, Mitch Richmond 3, Tiny Archibald 4, Boogie Cousins 5, De'Aaron Fox, he's still active and playing, Peja Stojakovic 7, Vlade Divac 8, Mike Bibby 9, and Kevin Martin 10. Jason Williams was a solid point guard. He wasn't that great, okay? So, he's probably not even in the top 15 of all-time great Kings players, I would argue. Okay. So Robert Horry disagreed with him. And Jason Williams had a solid career. I don't ever remember him making one single All-Star team in his career. I don't think he made an All-Star team in Sacramento. I don't think he made one in Memphis, Orlando, Miami. I don't ever recall Jason Williams ever making a All-Star team during his playing career. While Kobe Bryant was a multiple-time All-Star. You gotta remember, I just read off these names of greatest Kings in the history. Okay. All of these players I just read off are in front of Jason Williams. Okay. So, I'm just saying, Kobe, he is a top 5 Laker of all time. So, since Jason Williams thinks that Kobe Bryant is not a top 5 Laker, I have my top 10 Lakers of all time, okay? Now, this is going to be debated by some people. Magic 1, Kareem 2, Jerry West 3, Kobe 4, Wilt 5, Elgin Baylor 6, George Mikan 7, Shaq 8, James Worthy 9, and Gail Goodrich 10. Those are my top 10 Lakers of all time, okay? All right. So, just remember, Jason Williams, you were a solid point guard for your whole career. Never made an all-star team. You were just solid. Okay. So, that's the truth. You were just solid. All right. Kobe Bryant, multiple time All-Star, Hall of Famer. Can score like Mike. As Colin Cowherd would say, Kobe Bryant was MJ light. Okay. So, yeah. Kobe is a top 5 Laker of all time. Okay. So, the early 90s Trailblazers were one of the most exciting teams in the NBA. They had Clyde. They had Terry Porter. Buck Williams. They had Rick Adelman as coach. They had Jerome Kersey. Portland had players with, I didn't even mention Cliff Robinson. And Kevin Duckworth, multiple time All-Star. Kevin Duckworth. So they were one of the most exciting teams in the early 90s. I would probably say next to Chicago. Next to the Chicago Bulls, I would say. The most exciting team in the NBA to watch. So, the Portland Trailblazers were pretty good, but I think there was a certain narrative around the Portland Trailblazers that they were not a smart team. That they were not a smart basketball team. If you could get a couple of calls, if a couple of calls went against Portland, they would start complaining to the refs. If you could get if a couple of calls went against Portland, they would break down, okay? Case in point, the 1990 NBA Finals, when Kevin Duckworth went up against one of the greatest agitators in the game, Bill Laimbeer. And Duckworth was called for a couple of offensive fouls. And let's just say Bill Laimbeer got into Kevin Duckworth's head. And I don't think he just got into Kevin Duckworth's head. I think he got into Buck Williams' head. I think he got into the entire Trailblazers team head. Because if you watch that documentary about the Bad Boy Pistons, Clyde Drexler mentioned the fact that the Detroit Pistons would hit you, okay? And then the Blazers were like, okay, we're going to hit you back. Didn't quite work out that way because Portland got into foul trouble. Portland pretty much got into foul trouble using that strategy. And Bill Laimbeer basically said, they don't know how to get physical. So, complaining to the refs, Bill Laimbeer's in their head. Portland lost the series in 5 games. We all know Vinnie Johnson hit the game winner. So they come back and they lose to the Lakers in 1991 in the 1991 Western Conference Finals. Okay, and they come back strong for the 91-92 season. Okay, and they got blown out by the Chicago Bulls in Chicago during the regular season, okay? They pretty much got their asses handed to them by the Chicago Bulls in Chicago during the 91-92 season, okay? And Phil Jackson said that the Portland Trailblazers have a tendency to self-destruct, okay? This is when Phil Jackson said the Portland Trailblazers have a tendency to self-destruct. Okay? And so They got blown out by the Bulls, okay? Phil Jackson says they have a tendency to self-destruct. I don't know who particularly made the comments, but I guess somebody from the Chicago Bulls said they're not a smart basketball team. They lack smart play. That's what the papers wrote in Portland. That's what the paper said in Portland. The Portland Trailblazers are not a smart basketball team, okay? And I remember they came to Boston to play the Celtics. That was a game in which Larry Bird had 49 points. And the Celtics won in double overtime, by the way. Cliff Robinson got thrown out because he was going after referees over a foul call. So Cliff Robinson got kicked out of that game. Not surprisingly. So it was after Cliff Robinson got kicked out. Clyde Drexler was hit with a technical foul in that same game a few minutes later. Okay. And it was a 20-second timeout. And the NBA on NBC flashed a quote from Michael Jordan, which said, and Marv Albert was like, well, Michael Jordan recently had this to say on the Portland Trailblazers. Jordan saying they run the floor so well, we try to get them in a half-court game and make them utilize their minds as much as possible. Okay? And then Mike Fratello, the czar of the illustrator, said, I think all that Michael's saying, that this is a terrific transition team. And if you get them in a half-court game, you have a better chance of beating them that way. So that was basically all Michael Jordan was saying. Okay? But Phil Jackson, but Cliff Robinson getting thrown out only added to the narrative that the Portland Trailblazers were not a smart basketball team. Cliff Robinson getting thrown out only added to that narrative that the Portland Trailblazers were not a smart basketball team, okay? And you may remember during the game 1 of the 92 finals, Jordan dropped 6 threes on them in the first half. Okay? And Magic Johnson mentioned during the broadcast, he said, let's go back to what we talked about at the top of the show. Poor decision making. And right now, Portland's making poor decisions. 3-pointer by Clyde Drexler, air ball. Cliff Robinson shoots an off-balance shot. They try alley-oop. It doesn't work. Steal by Pippen on the aerial pass. Dunk by Michael Jordan. So it's just poor decision making that's leading up to this big lead. Again, that only added to the narrative that the Portland Trailblazers were not a smart basketball team. Okay. We're not a smart basketball team, okay? And I think it's kind of unfortunate that they were labeled as not a smart basketball team, but they were not a smart basketball team. Remember what I said. You get a couple of calls to go against them. They start complaining to the refs. The Portland Trailblazers were not a smart basketball team. And it showed in the 92 NBA Finals when they got their butts handed to them by the Bulls. Should have been a sweep, but no. We all know NBA Finals really don't work out that way sometimes, but yeah. The Portland Trailblazers, hate to say it, they were not a smart team, okay? And it kind of reared its ugly head on the back end of the 90s, going into the early 2000s, okay? We all know about the 15-point lead that they had We all know about the 15-point lead that they had in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. Lakers go on like a 22-4 run, and the Lakers end up in the NBA Finals. And I don't know if you remember it, but Derek Fisher was attempting to shake Scottie Pippen's hand as the game was close to winding down when the Lakers were moving on. I believe Derek Fisher went over to try to shake Scottie Pippen's hand, and Scottie Pippen refused to shake his hand. Like, man, I don't want to shake your other hand. Yeah, I'm not shaking your other hand. Because you remember, you had Rasheed Wallace, who could get teed up by a referee just for looking at somebody the wrong way. Which actually, that happened in Game 1. Okay. I remember watching that game. They gave Rasheed Wallace a technical foul just for looking at the referee the wrong way. Okay. And when you have the reputation that Rasheed Wallace had, hey, the slightest thing could trigger the slightest thing. Hey, you don't even have to say, hey, nothing. Okay. You don't even have to say, hey, nothing. And the referee could just end up teeing you up. Rasheed Wallace had that kind of a reputation, okay? But anyway, yeah, they blew the lead, lost to Lakers, and there was the incident where Rasheed Wallace threw a towel at Arvydas Sabonis and the next season. And you got to remember something. Portland had one of the best records in the league that year. And then they really faltered down the stretch. And they ended up getting swept by the Lakers the very next year in the first round. They come back for the 2002 season. They get swept by the Lakers in the first round. Go figure. So, yeah. The Portland Trailblazers were not a smart team in the early 90s. They were not they were a pretty smart team in the early 2000s. But I think it was a lot more emotion. Just like the 90s Trailblazers. But yeah. The early Trailblazers of the 90s played with emotion. They played with emotion and they played reckless. And like I said, they were not a smart basketball team. I'm sorry, Portland. I'm sorry, Portland. You were not a smart basketball team, especially the early 90s Blazers. That's just how I see it. That's just how I see it. Okay. So, anyway, stay tuned. I will be back for more content. You are watching Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. Welcome back to Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. So, I was watching a segment on Greg Ostertag, the Utah Jazz center. Played most of his career in Utah. So I saw a piece they did on the Ostertag. Greg Ostertag is living in Texas now. He's doing pretty well. He has his own restaurant. He has his own farm, which I think is pretty cool. He has a couple of I believe he has a couple of camels, a few camels, cows, roosters, chickens. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's pretty nice to see him doing well after retirement. So Greg Ostertag is doing pretty damn well. Love to see it. And he reflected back on his NBA career. Greg Ostertag, looking back on his NBA career, said that he had regrets. He fought with Jerry Sloan. He routinely fought with Jerry Sloan pretty often. He routinely fought with Jerry Sloan. And he said he had some regrets about his NBA career. He said he was inconsistent during his NBA career. During his NBA career, he was not consistent. And he talked about how he regretted that inconsistency during his career. And he regretted about the fact that he fought with Jerry Sloan so much. And they also had John Stockton and Phil Ford, who was a assistant coach, who was one of Jerry Sloan's assistants in the 90s. And pretty much all throughout his tenure as a Jazz coach. Phil Ford and John Stockton had a different approach to it. Looked at it from a different standpoint. They said that, like anybody, every player, every coach is going to have their battles. And John Stockton talked about how Greg should not have any regrets about his NBA career. He shouldn't have any regrets about his NBA career. That he shouldn't have regrets about fighting with Coach Sloan. And whether the Utah Jazz players realize it or not, Coach Sloan really cared about them as players and as people. And Greg Ostertag mentioned that the older he got, the more he understood that why Coach Sloan was hard on him. Why Coach Jerry Sloan was hard on him. The older he got, the more he understood. And he was recalling his last conversation with Jerry Sloan. God rest his soul. He's passed now. He recalled his last conversation with Jerry Sloan. And he said Jerry couldn't talk, but he could hear him. He could hear him, and he was appreciating Jerry, telling Jerry how much he appreciated him. And so, and he got pretty emotional. Yeah, he got pretty emotional when talking about the fights he had with Coach Sloan and his inconsistency during his career. But he played 11 years in the league. Yeah, he played 11 years. 10 of them with the Utah Jazz, 1 in Sacramento. So yeah, he played a while. Now, he also said that he wishes that he had a few more years. He wishes that he had a few more years. But he's pretty, but he's happy now. Like I said, he has his own restaurant, has his own farm. He's doing pretty well. Like to see that. All right. That's it for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. Stay tuned, because I will be bringing y'all more content. I am out of here. Peace. The Portland Trailblazers were not on a smart art team. I'm done, Portland. I'm done, y'all. I'm done.